Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. I'm your host, France Tapon. In this episode, I have Nejc Trušnovec. Did I pronounce that right, Nejc?
Yeah, it's Trušnovec, quite right.
Damn, I'm good. I'm almost Slovenian.
Well, you spent some time here, so I suppose you learned enough
That's
to
right.
be able
That's
to
right.
pronounce my quite rare surname right.
That's true. Actually, it's not that rare, probably in Slovenia, right?
It actually is. And one interesting thing is that there's more people living in the US with this surname than in Slovenia.
That's because the Slovenians are trying to colonize the United States.
Actually, there were two brothers who moved to the US the late 19th century, and
They had a
obviously
lot of
were
kids.
quite... Yeah.
Which is ironic because Slovenia has one of the lowest fertility rates. I imagine it's probably less than 2.
Yeah, it's very low, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're here to talk about your favorite country, Russia, and and your second favorite country, Ukraine. And number 10 on the list is Slovenia.
All right.
So now I really respect you, Nejc, because even though you're not, you don't have a degree in history, right? What is your degree in for university?
I have a degree in geography, but yeah, since childhood, I've always been very keen on history, and I've been reading lots of stuff throughout my life, like daily. I just read stuff about history, about geopolitics, about many different fields, actually. So yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm
you also
not,
do
like,
war games too. You study war to a really tight degree. I mean, you watch YouTube videos, you read stuff. You're just like a war lunatic. In fact, you're a very violent person. I think you slapped me once across the face.
Yeah, try not to cross my path. Yeah, well, you are painting quite a wrong picture about me, I suppose.
Well, that's why I'm doing this interview virtually and not in front of your face.
Yeah.
That way I can insult you from far away. I know Slovenia doesn't have any nuclear weapons, so I'm safe. Okay, so when I posted on March 10th my opinion about Russia, you wrote something on my Facebook page, and he says you wrote, Putin already lost the war in Ukraine. Now, by the way, I think I can't remember the date that the war started, but it was in late February, so roughly February 22nd or something like that. So you basically declared, and not even a month had passed, and you said Putin had already lost the war in Ukraine. His plan was victory in 2 to 3 days. It will be apparent soon. The media just has to catch up with the reality on the ground.
Yep.
And then I asked you, well, what do you predict? He says Putin is going to be removed by his inner circle. The Russian army shown to be just a paper tiger minus the nuclear weapons. It was this year's, it was marketed, for years it was marketed as a potent force, but this invasion really revealed huge issues it has. And you go on about the kleptocracy that ruined the Russian army and things like that. So share a little bit about what you think of. Here we're recording this. It's just on the brink of March 27th, my brother's birthday, 2022. And currently, what do you see the situation, the war going on? And are they making any progress? Are you surprised that they haven't thrown in the towel yet, that the Russians haven't thrown in the towel yet? How much longer do you see this going? Or have you reversed your position at all?
So I haven't reversed my position at all. Actually, all the signs are there that the Russian army is just digging in, and on a few places is actually being pushed back. So the Ukrainian army is currently just probing the Russian defenses. And I guess, I'm not a military historian or not from military profession at all, but my guess is that there have been all the things that can cause the Russian military to collapse are in place. And with each day, Ukraine is getting stronger while Russia is getting weaker. So, I mean, we know from history that Russians in general are very strong and stubborn and are not easy to fold, but I suppose they cannot withstand the time pressure here because they are really on the back footing.
Well, Russia really became super famous in its ability to defend itself. I mean, beating
Yeah.
Napoleon right at the, they're really good at defending themselves and finding the strength to fight off
Mhm.
Napoleon, to fight off Hitler, to win in Stalingrad. I mean, these were amazing things, and hold off St. Petersburg and of course Moscow during, against the Nazis. And of course, they
Mhm.
did. They know how to run an offense because they were
Mhm.
able to take over 15, lots of territories during the Soviet time.
Yeah.
But their defense is their strength, and I think, in my opinion, but maybe I'm wrong,
Mhm.
and maybe they're just not. They're out of practice. It's been a while since they expanded their empire.
Actually, the military analysts who check the way their tactical moves are, the way they fight, the operational moves are, they're very similar to the 70s and 80s Soviet Union. So basically, Russia hasn't upgraded that much in the way they fight their wars. It's just that the things that previously were not very visible became very clear now in the way how Russia do its things when it comes to huge military offensives, which it cannot really control the way they would like to. So controlling huge offensives in a foreign ground, which is very fanatically opposing uh, every move you do, is very hard. So previously they were fighting, well, in the Soviet Union, for example, they were fighting in Afghanistan, but this was a totally different war than it's here. They were fighting in Georgia, and they were fighting at a totally different war there. They
You're
were
talking about
fighting in
Georgia.
Chechnya,
Yeah,
Georgia. Sorry, yeah,
yeah. In
Slovenian.
English, you said it the
Yeah,
correct way.
sorry.
No, you said it
Yeah,
the correct way, but we just know it as Georgia.
yeah,
Atlanta, Georgia.
yeah.
when Russia was in the Atlanta, Georgia 1992 Olympics. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Continue. So, that,
So
I,
basically, it's first time after the Second World War actually that they've done something like this. And it shows just how much their planning and their stating goals were just not on par with anything. With not with the reality is that their military is just not working from the bottom up. It's just a huge mess.
right, but there's a
There's
lot of
not yeah.
self-righteous Americans who are kind of observing this, and they're just saying, "Ah,
Yeah.
they suck. They didn't prepare the resistance. They didn't think that Ukrainians. They totally misjudged how
Yeah.
Ukrainians would actually feel once they thought they were going to be thrown roses, but instead of
Hmm.
grenades or Molotov cocktails." But the United States did the same mistake in Iraq when they kind of got rid of Saddam Hussein. They kind of thought,
Yeah.
"Hey, so maybe this is just hubris that a lot of countries make this error that they think that they're loved more than they really are."
Well, Russian definitely thought they are better than they actually are. Well, their military at least. Um, Americans were very well prepared with their invasion in Iraq, much better than Russians are now. So the, the premise was quite different from what Russians are doing now in Ukraine. The whole idea of attacking Ukraine with just a little less than 200,000 soldiers was lunacy in the face of how stiffened Ukraine has become since 2014. If we would be talking 2014 and this attack would happen, we would probably have quite a different result than we are having now. But 8 years have passed since, and Ukraine has shown quite a huge resolve against any such incursions. And I mean, the Russian military made so many mistakes. Of course, there was this idea that Ukraine will just fold, it will collapse in 2, 3 days max tops. It didn't, and then they didn't have any plan B to start with. So they are just, trying to send iron and people towards these 5 or 6 axis of advances, which they cannot defend at all because they are too spread out, and they're just not, adjusting yet. The only adjustment they made is that they started to dig in on all the fronts at the moment, and are being slowly pushed back because they cannot support their supply lines well. They're losing a lot of military equipment just by, Ukrainian territorial defense, quite lesser ranking militia, which is able to wreak havoc on their convoys, and army without supply is lost.
Right. And the other thing is that if you looked at how the United States ran its Gulf Wars in 1991, as well as when it went into Iraq, and hell, even Afghanistan to some extent, although I think it's slightly different there. The United States, you can see their plan of attack is always the same. Air power, air power, air power. They just bomb the crap out of you. They really neutralize and just, they own the skies. That's their
shock and awe.
Yeah. And just shock and awe. And those guys really control the sky. And then after the bombs have kind of settled, that's when the army comes in. And I was just fascinated to see that Russia didn't do that strategy. They didn't try to like own the skies and try to really, completely dominate the skies, because I guess Ukraine has good enough air defenses to stop them, and they probably just don't have a big enough Air Force and Navy pilots or Army pilots to do something. They don't have enough air power, basically, to get that started.
They do not have enough air power. Also, their precision munition is very low. It has been spent in the Syrian war, quite a lot of it. So they were running just small stocks to get from the get-go. Also, their planes are not really equipped with precision guiding systems. A lot of their planes are just made to be, dump bombing everything. While in Syria, it kind of worked in detriment with all the civilians which lost their lives there. Here, of course, they tried to do a shock and awe the first day. It was not strong enough, and their Air Force did a lot of stupid mistakes. I don't know, like their chopper attack with special forces on Hostomel airport near Kiev, which was totally repulsed first by Ukrainian artillery, which was not, destroyed, and then by Ukrainian ground forces. And when this didn't work, they just, repeat the same mistake again and again and again. And this repeating again the same mistakes is just kind of the promise of this unfortunate war, tragic war. Russians just don't, try to do different things. They just throw again and again more personnel, more military, more tanks at a problem, trying to solve it that way, with just sheer mass, but it doesn't work in Ukraine.
Right, because, it could work with Estonia. It could work with a small country, I guess what I'm saying, but to try to do 44 million people or however many, it's a lot harder. I really respect your opinion on this because I was completely wrong. I love to admit that I'm wrong. So this is one of those cases I get to admit that I'm wrong. And that I just thought, hey, why is Ukraine even going to put up a fight? Why don't they just lay down their weapons and let them storm into the capital, and then everybody will feel sorry for them, just like we did with Kuwait? Because remember when Saddam Hussein Kuwait basically didn't put up a fight. And of course, what did that do? That got the entire world riled up, and everybody said, we're going to pass a United Nations resolution. This is an unjust, these guys are just, it's like attacking Switzerland or something like that. Well, even Switzerland has arms. But anyway, so I just thought, hey, Ukraine, why don't you just not even put up a fight? Just let them take over the capital and do everything like that. Just surrender immediately. And then the world will come behind you. But because I thought it's going to be a hopeless fight. Boy, was I wrong. So far at least. But here's the one thing I will say, Nejc, is that don't we think that maybe we're judging this war a little bit too fast? I remember Hitler did his blitzkrieg when he went all the way to France, and that was a lightning quick. But how many weeks was it that he finally got to Paris? It was like a month or two? How long did it take?
A month, I think. It lasted a month, a good month. Yeah.
Okay, and so all I'm saying is that, here we just are recording this on the 1 month anniversary, and we're kind of already saying that you started within 2 weeks. You already said it's over. And I was like, aren't you being a little bit premature here of declaring, like, war can be a long thing. It can last for years. And maybe Russia looked like they had lost in the World War II, and then they finally hid behind the Ural Mountains. They built a huge production to finally get their war machine going in World War II and finally make a comeback. But they looked like they had lost. and yet they came back. So are we declaring victory a little bit too soon here?
Well, we could, but all the signs on the ground are telling we are not wrong. So I would be really, really surprised if Russia would be somehow able to go around Kiev, to besiege it properly, to take over the whole eastern part and also the western part. It does not have the manpower. Also, if they would start ramping up, military production. The thing is, Second World War was quite different militarily from what we have now. All the equipment that you need to produce is quite expensive and you need to put global efforts to get all the components that you need to build a capable machine, war machine. So Russia being cut now is already having a huge problem with tank production. Their main facility in Russia already stopped producing their latest battle tanks. They cannot do it anymore because they are lacking basic stuff that they need to put in those tanks to be able for them to make them. So this industrial part of the war is not going well for them. Again, if you produce just very simple mechanical machines from past times, you could do it, but not anymore because this optics, special optics, special equipment is very, very time consuming to produce, very technically hard to make. And if you are cut from, your resources from around the globe, you will have a huge problem creating your own facilities because these things need years to be made. It's not just like, a few weeks we'll make our own facility and then we will be able to commence with our own production. No, it doesn't work that way anymore.
Okay. In our 5 minutes that we have left, I just want to get a sense of where you think this is going to go. Here we are at March 27th. Where do you think this is going to go, Nejc?
So Russian army will have more and more problems in Ukraine. In 1 month's time, their supplying capacities will be very, very low. It means I predict that in 1 month's time, a huge collapse for Russian army will happen. It could even happen before. So the northern front around Kiev will definitely fall, around Chernihiv too, around Sumy too, Kharkiv and the more eastern parts around Luhansk and Donetsk might be harder thing to crack for Ukrainian army. But when the north falls, then Ukrainian army is able to then focus on the east and on the south, and then there's going to be a huge problem for Russian military. Then again, if Russian military would, instead of 5 or 6, even 6 axis of advances, make just 2 axes of advances and focus on the eastern part of Ukraine and have lesser goals than they had, which was basically occupation of the whole of Ukraine, then they would be able to pull this thing off with the military they have. But now they are too spread out, they are too thin, they cannot. Actually, they have, I think like 1,400 kilometers of front they have to defend with just not enough military. So they will be gradually greened and turned back. And I would not be surprised if Ukraine then enters even Luhansk and Donetsk at one point and will be able to claim even the southern parts of Ukraine. We'll see how this goes.
It reminds me a little bit of Hitler's Barbarossa attack, where he went to 3 different places in Russia all at once, in Soviet Union, should I say, and spread himself pretty thin. And maybe if he had just focused on one place, he might have succeeded in that. What do you think is going to happen to Putin?
Well, there's, signs that Putin is already being put on the getting rid list in Russia.
Sorry, what does that mean?
Of course, this is, he's on the list of being removed, and
who's got this list going?
It's just, people from the intelligence that they kind of spread a little bit of drips of data here and there, and then I have my friends who are connected with them, and it's these lines. It's basically it's really funny. It's one firm who created a very well a simulation of a tactical level game, which predicted war in Ukraine will happen many years before it happened. They created a game which you can still play today.
What's the name?
Tactical level game. It's Combat Mission Black Sea. It started to be created, I think, in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. And then in 2014, the first war started in Ukraine. This is now the second war, or well, for Ukrainians, it's still the first war, but escalated now. And so these guys also produce military quality simulations for UK military, for US military, and they have connections quite high up, and they are eager to share some of those information around, to the users. So it's really nice to be so close to the information that matters.
What are your top 3 news sources that you get your information from? Because that's one of the things I worry about, is that sometimes we're just buying into, a lot of war is all about propaganda. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
sometimes,
definitely.
and so I'm just like, sometimes I'm like, I shouldn't be listening to some of these Western sources because they're all singing the same song.
Mm. So the thing is with all the wars, like you said, also the Ukraine is using this as a propaganda tool, but not on the level as the Russia does. If you look at past records from the 2014 war in Luhansk and Donetsk, you would see that Ukraine in general put up information about how the war was going, but quite more reliably than Russia did, of course, because Russia, most of the things that they put out is just a lie, it was so funny when Russian Ministry of Defense, I think, put out a number that 500 or something Russian soldiers died, while in reality it was more like 7,000, 2 weeks ago. Now they have pushed it up to 1,500 Russians killed, which is quite a far cry from the probable 14,000 Russians killed and 20 to 30,000 Russians injured. So yeah, Russian side of things, you cannot trust much, while Ukrainian side is quite more on par with the reality.
In the 2 minutes that we have left, hold on, in the 2 minutes left, just give us some of the news sources that you like.
Okay, so my number one news source that I use is the forum, where people, different veterans from different American wars, analysts, ex-intelligence officers are talking about these things, are analyzing these things, and so it's like a conglomerate of all the news. And so I am saving a lot of time just by reading that stuff. And they basically gather different like media reports and different news from the ground, analyze it, say, okay, this was published by Russians, this is what's missing here, this is what is lagging here, this was published by Ukrainians, this is good, this is not good. So at the end, they basically analyze everything and just make a finalized product, or like a product which many people agree with, many people who are professional in their fields, and if they don't dispute it, then it's probably true,
Okay, so I'll go ahead and put that
ground.
link to the show in the show notes.
Yeah.
I'll put that as your number one source.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
cool.
appreciate that. So you think the war is going to end in the next couple of months, or do you think this is going to drag on for a couple of years?
It could drag on, but I would be surprised. I mean, if it would. I would give Russian army max 1 month before the collapse starts, and then we'll see how far they are pushed. In the north, I suppose they will be just pushed away, while on the far east with Luhansk, Donetsk, and in Crimea, I suppose things could could continue in a way they did until now. So like a frozen conflict, but it will be really, really hard for Russians to hold on to those places. Really hard, because they have such huge casualties and inability to really fill the gaps to be able to defend these places anymore.
As they say in your country, hvala lepa.
Prosim.
That's for everybody else. That means thank you in Slovenian. Okay, well, thank you again, Nejc, and I will maybe check back with you when this war settles down.
Well, thanks to you. You're welcome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
let's check again after some collapse of Russian army.
Okay.